Welcome to another edition of SVSU Red Alert, your weekly update on Saginaw Valley State University athletics. I'm your host, JJ Boehm. The SVSU football team saw its season come to a close in a hard-fought overtime loss to the defending national champions in the playoffs, the University of Minnesota Duluth. I'm joined now by SVSU head football coach Jim Collins. And Coach, boy, this was everything you would want a playoff game to be in terms of how competitive it was, how cleanly played it was, all of those kinds of things.
Absolutely. Two good football teams battling it out. You know, we had some snow. The elements were tough, at least in that first half, really tough. And you saw two hard-fought teams and two good football teams play, put everything they could into it, and it was a great football game.
What was the difference between the first half and the second half? Because Duluth had the better of play in the first half, and then Saginaw Valley had the better of play in the second half.
You know, we've been a team that's kind of fed off of each other, offense, defense. And I think what happened was we came out in the second half, knowing that we had struggled running the football and made a commitment to throwing the football. We said, our best opportunity to get the ball moving and to put the ball in the end zone was to throw it. And we came out, we got a couple first downs. We had some big play opportunities, and I think our defense fed off of that. They got excited, ran to the football better. I think we put more pressure on Duluth at that point. And I think what you saw was just people making plays and the momentum building, and that's what football is all about. It's momentum, and you start playing a little bit harder, you start playing with more emotion, and you start having better results.
Late in the game, you line up for a field goal on 4th and 2, and then you call timeout, think better of it, and go for it. Ultimately, you do get the field goal to send it to overtime. But what was your thinking at that stage of the game? I think there were about 2.5 minutes to play.
The big thing for us, it was so windy that our confidence in the field goal kicking at that point wasn't great. But at the same time, we thought we had an opportunity to put the ball in the end zone and win the game rather than play for the tie at that point. We also knew we had some timeouts left, that if we could get a stop, get the football back, we'd be okay. So, we made the decision. We thought we had a great play called. It wasn't executed like we had hoped, but then our defense went back on the field, got the stop, and got the ball back for us.
So then you do get the game into overtime, and then you wind up after penalty call having the same situation with a field goal, and Scott Stanford does make it from about the same distance.
Absolutely, and it was a great kick. And you look back and you say, if we had known it was going to look that easy, would we have gone for it before? I think the big thing at that point is we thought we had to get go-ahead points. We didn't want to give them their offense the ball back. We wanted to put that game into our hands with a lead, but it was great to see Scott execute that kick. As a true freshman, to show up in those conditions, that wind, that cold, with a pressure kick and be able to make it, in overtime, you got to take your hats off to him. And I think, Scott's got a great future.
So he did a good job to get it there, and then I thought from Minnesota Duluth's standpoint, they made a good decision on the play call, on their pass play to set them up. So, I mean, a game where there's just so much, on the field that was good from both sides.
And really a great call by them, because we had been doing a great job of stuffing the run, and they came out with a play action boot, and our linebackers had really sucked up, and the crossing pattern was open, and then he did a good job of running with the ball after the catch. That was a tough one to swallow right there, because we had thought that we had scored in overtime. We had that score called back, and settling for the field goal was good, but not good enough, obviously.
You mentioned the penalty, and obviously no coach wants to harp on that. At the same time, it was such a pivotal call at that point of the game. What did you try and tell your team about that call at that stage of the game?
Well, it was tough to diagnose from the sidelines. It was tough to see exactly what happened. The explanation from the officials wasn't great, so you didn't know. And they called it on Mark Thrash. You're wondering what Mark Thrash did. I asked him what he did on the sidelines. He didn't really know what he did, and but you got to overcome those things. And that's one of the things about football in general and life in general. You got to overcome those things. All the breaks are not always going to go your way, and you got to have the ability to overcome them. I thought we put ourselves in great position with that field goal in overtime. That's one of those things where that could have been devastating. It could have taken us off the scoreboard completely, but obviously, JJ, the field goal wasn't good enough.
At the same time, there were a lot of things that you did well in this game, especially in the pass game, where you got some big plays from your passing game, especially from Jennings to Janis. That's really most of your offense in the first half is the 176-yard touchdown.
You know, and that was a matchup that we really felt good about going into the game. You know, those conditions made it tough to pass. There was another opportunity we had in the second half where the ball seemed like got caught up in the wind and Jeff wasn't able to catch it. But you know, that was that matchup that we knew that one-on-one we had to take advantage of, and we did a great job, I thought, of executing it, especially in the second half when we needed to.
And for the game, Janis winds up with 6 catches for 179 yards and 3 touchdowns. Quite a performance from the sophomore.
Absolutely. In a playoff game against a great defense, a great football team on the road, you put all those elements into it. You know, and I think when you look at the future of our passing attack with a sophomore quarterback and Jeff only being a sophomore and Mark Thrash being a sophomore and tight ends coming back next year, things look really good for next year in terms of throwing the football. I think we set the tone in the passing game that we wanted to set, you know, and then even in overtime being able to move the football in the passing game right down in there. I think the big thing for Jeff is he's just got to keep getting better. He's got to keep working because the sky's the limit for him.
What do you tell your team after this game in terms of the way they fought, the way they competed? Ultimately, you'd like to still be playing, but I thought it was a good effort from your team from start to finish.
You know, I think you build on it. I think you use it as momentum and motivation leading into your offseason because the time you spend between now and August is extremely important in how successful you're going to be in 2012. And if we make use of every little minute of that time, if we work hard, if we do all the things you got to do, and we do it with a little bit of a chip on our shoulder, I think that's going to be really important for us to have a successful 2012 season.
Well, we'll talk about that with Coach Collins. We'll review 2011 and take a look at 2012 when we come back as SVSU Red Alert continues.
Saginaw Valley State University, where students learn in personal classroom settings and state-of-the-art labs. Where students make a difference in Michigan's Great Lakes Bay region and study the world. A place where we celebrate red pride. Saginaw Valley State University.
Welcome back to SVSU Red Alert. The 2011 football team saw the Cardinals advance to the postseason. Unfortunately, they came up a little bit short with that overtime loss, but Coach Collins, overall, I know that was one of your goals before the season was to get back into the postseason. You accomplished that. As you look at the whole body of work for 2011, how do you evaluate your team's performance?
We evaluated very highly, and only because we were a young football team coming off of what was a down year for Saginaw Valley football and lower than our expectations, obviously, the 2010 season. I think this team worked extremely hard from start to finish. They never gave up on each other. You know, the playoff game was a great example of, I think, how the whole season went. This was a team that fought hard, that had character, that could fight from behind, that didn't get down on each other, didn't get down on themselves, and prevailed in a lot of those situations. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do it in the playoffs, but I think we'll learn from it. I think it'll give us motivation, and I think when you look back at the season, you look back at the seniors especially, you got to be proud of them.
And 13 seniors who now have played their final game in a Cardinal uniform. A lot of them really stepped up for this team this year, even before the season started.
Exactly. And you know, the best thing about it is we didn't have one guy that was the big talker of the group. It was basically all of them working hard together, setting a tone, leading by example. And really, that's what you want out of that group. You want them all to work hard together, to lead by example, and influence the younger guys. And I think they did a great job of that.
The all GLIAC teams have been announced. SVSU with 7 players on either the first or second team. Grant Caserta and Frank Turamenia on the first team. And then you're also fortunate to get players on the second team like Nick Galena, Jonathan Jennings, Brandon Williams, Jeff Heath, and Darius Middlebrooks.
All 7 of those guys had great seasons. And, it was obviously when you have a lot of all-conference players, it shows where your team is and where your program is and how it's respected. And there's other guys on this football team that probably were deserved, but you know how that goes. Everybody gets a vote, and there's 14 teams in the league, and it's tough to be an all-conference player. But what we had, I think, was a lot of solid football players contributing to success on the field. So when you have that, you're proud of it, and you're going to win football games.
What do you look for most from your team now going into as you start preparing for 2012? You're going to open with perennial power in Valdosta State to open your home schedule, and then you'll have another tough road through the GLIAC.
The GLIAC's as tough as it's ever been. I think the realignment with the divisions is going to make things extremely competitive, and but I think we're going to have extremely high expectations, and we're going to have to work very hard to live up to those expectations. But I think we have the group, the leadership, and the talent to do that. It's going to take a lot of hard work. And more than anything, I think we got to do it one day at a time. I don't think we can look too far ahead. I think we got to put first things first. From a coaching staff, we've got to focus on the development of our team right now, both academically and athletically, and then the recruitment of student athletes that are going to fit the profile we're looking for here at Saginaw Valley.
How much do some of those things going on in terms of facilities and other improvements help what you're going to try to do in terms of the addition of lights and the turf for the season that had an all-time record attendance, and then also the Harriman's family weight room now dedicated? You've added a strength and conditioning coach. How much do all of those things mean to a football program?
They mean a lot, JJ, and everything we're talking about that I just mentioned that needs to happen between now and August, those are the things that will impact the goals greatly. You look at that environment on game day. All of the recruits we had come visit were extremely pleased with what they saw on game days at Saginaw Valley, that environment, that excitement and enthusiasm. So that's going to help in the recruiting aspect. That field's also going to help when we go out there for the spring and deal with the elements of mid-Michigan in the spring. Having that type of field to practice on is going to help in that regard. And then the weight room and Anthony Del Pizzi as our strength coach, that's going to have a tremendous impact on the development of our players. And that's what we need. We need great development and improvement between now and August.
You mentioned recruiting. What are your recruiting priorities now as you head into that season? Because there's always some season going on in a college football program, and that's what you have to work on next.
Well, I think the big thing is we've got to evaluate where we are weak, what our needs are, and I think there's certain areas that we need more depth in. You always want offensive and defensive linemen, and you always want speed and skill. And, I think there's certain areas that we'll look at over the next couple weeks and really evaluate hard. The good news is we're on a lot of good players, and we've been on them early, and we're excited because there's a lot of people interested in Saginaw Valley.
What's the number one thing that you need to do now to work with your team to build towards taking this season and raising it up a level or two?
I think when you evaluate that playoff game and you look at where Minnesota Duluth is, from our standpoint, standing on the sidelines, they seemed like they were a stronger football team. Now, that probably comes with having a lot of juniors and seniors on the field, experience, and that's where we need to improve. For us to elevate ourselves to a position of a premier football program, I think we need to build a more powerful, strong team. That's the things that are going to happen this offseason.
Well, hopefully all of that comes together for you. It certainly was an exciting season to be a part of. And Coach Collins, thank you for bringing it to us. Good luck in 2012.
Thanks, JJ.
And we thank you for joining us both today and throughout the season. We hope you have enjoyed this edition of SVSU Red Alert.